when a black boy tearfully asks, "Why don't they like me?" His mum's emotional response reveals a truth about racism so powerful it leaves everyone, including you, in tears. The late afternoon sun streamed through the cracks in the curtains, casting golden beams across the small living room. 10-year-old Jamal sat cross-legged on the floor, his crayon gliding across a piece of paper. His focus was intense as he carefully shaded in the vibrant hues of a sunset, his favorite time of day. His mother, Dana, sat on the worn couch behind him, sorting through a stack of bills. Her tired eyes lingered on each envelope a moment too long before setting them aside. "Look, Mommy," Jamal chirped, holding up his picture. The sunset glowed on the page, but his mother's face lit up even brighter. "It's beautiful, baby," Dana said with a soft smile, pulling him close for a hug. Jamal beamed, his face filled with pride. For a moment, the weight of the world outside their small apartment felt a little lighter. The joy was short-lived. The front door creaked open, and Jamal's older sister, Naya, stepped inside. Her usual bubbly demeanor was gone, replaced by a heavy silence that made Dana look up immediately. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Dana asked, her brow furrowing. Nia shrugged, dropping her backpack by the door. "It's nothing," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. But Jamal, ever curious, piped up. "Did someone make you mad at school again, Nia?" he asked, tilting his head. She hesitated before muttering, "It's just this girl. She said something mean. I'm over it." Dana frowned, her heart sinking. Nia was 12 now, old enough to start noticing how the world sometimes treated them differently. Dana had seen this before, small, cutting comments that chipped away at a child's confidence, but she wasn't ready for the conversation to veer in the direction it did. Jamal tugged on Nia's sleeve. "What did she say? Was it about your hair again?" he asked innocently, referring to an earlier incident when a classmate made fun of Nia's natural curls. Nia froze, her expression shifting to one of frustration. "Why do you always ask so many questions, Jamal?" "Sorry," Jamal whispered, shrinking back. But after a beat, he turned to his mother. His voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "Mommy," he began, his brown eyes wide and filled with confusion. "Why don't they like us? Why don't they like me?" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, silencing the room. Dana's breath hitched, her fingers trembling slightly as she set the bills aside. Nia's expression softened as she glanced at her little brother, his innocence laid bare. Dana blinked back tears, her chest tightening as she met Jamal's gaze. "What do you mean, baby?" she asked gently, her voice barely steady. Jamal hesitated, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "At recess, some of the kids didn't want to play with me. They said I couldn't because I'm different." His voice cracked, and his head dropped. "They said I'm not like them." Dana's heart shattered in that moment. How could she explain the weight of a world that judged her son before it ever got to know him? She wanted to shield him from the ugliness, to wrap him in her arms and keep him safe forever. But she knew that wasn't the answer. As Jamal's innocent question lingered, tears welled in Dana's eyes. She reached for him, pulling him into her arms. "Come here, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jamal curled into her lap, his small body trembling as she held him tight. "I don't understand, Mommy," he whispered against her shoulder. "Why don't they like me?" Dana stroked his hair, silent for a moment as she fought to steady her emotions. She could feel Nia watching them, her own eyes glassy as she leaned against the wall. Dana took a deep breath, knowing that her response would define how Jamal saw himself and the world for years to come. But before she could speak, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Dana held Jamal close, her arms wrapped around his small frame as she tried to find the words. The room was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock. She could feel Nia's gaze on her, waiting for her to answer. How do you explain a world so unfair to a boy so innocent? Taking a shaky breath, Dana gently cupped Jamal's face and lifted his chin so his teary eyes met hers. "Jamal, baby," she began softly, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not that they don't like you. It's that they don't understand you. And sometimes, when people don't understand something, they act mean instead of kind." Jamal blinked up at her, his lip trembling. "But why don't they understand me, Mommy? I didn't do anything wrong." Dana's heart ached at his words, the raw confusion in his voice slicing through her. She wished she could tell him the world was fair, that kindness would always be returned, but she knew that wasn't the truth he needed. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong," Dana said, brushing a tear from his cheek. "You are perfect just the way you are. But sometimes people don't see what's in your heart. They only see what's on the outside, and that's all they choose to judge." Nia, who had been leaning quietly against the wall, finally spoke. "Like how that girl at school said my hair looked messy, just because it's curly," she muttered, her voice low but filled with hurt. Dana looked over at her daughter, her chest tightening. "Exactly, Nia," she said, her voice firm but tender. "People sometimes say things because they don't know better, or because they've been taught the wrong things about us, about our skin, our hair, and even the way we talk." Jamal's brow furrowed as he processed her words. "But why would someone teach them to think that way?" he asked quietly. "It's mean." Dana sighed deeply, trying to hold back her tears. How could she explain centuries of prejudice and systemic racism to a 10-year-old? "It is mean, Jamal," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And it's not fair. But a long time ago, people who looked like us were treated very badly, just because of the color of their skin. And even though a lot has changed, there are still some people who hold on to those wrong ideas." Jamal frowned, his innocent face etched with sadness. "So they don't like me because I'm black?" he asked, his voice cracking. Dana closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself to stay strong. She opened them and looked directly at her son, her voice filled with conviction. "Listen to me, Jamal. Being black is beautiful. It's powerful. You come from a long line of people who have overcome so much, who have fought and dreamed and worked hard to make this world better. Never let anyone make you feel less because of the color of your skin. You are strong, you are smart, and you are loved." Jamal blinked back at her, his small hands gripping her shirt tightly. "But what if they don't ever like me, Mommy?" Dana's breath hitched, but she quickly steadied herself. "Baby, not everyone will like you," she said honestly, her voice trembling. "But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you love yourself. And you will find people who see you for who you truly are. Kind, funny, talented, and brave. Those are the people who matter." From the corner of the room, Nia wiped at her eyes and stepped closer, sitting down next to her brother. "Jamal, you're the coolest little brother ever," she said softly. "And if anyone doesn't see that, it's their loss, not yours." Jamal looked between his mom and sister, his expression softening. "Really?" "Really," Dana said, kissing his forehead. "And it's okay to feel sad when people aren't nice. But don't let it change who you are. Keep being the sweet, kind boy that you are. That's how you change the world. By showing people love, even when they don't deserve it." Jamal nodded slowly, his tears starting to dry. "I'll try," he said quietly. Dana hugged him tightly, her tears finally spilling over as she whispered, "You don't have to try, baby. Just be you. That's enough." For a moment, the three of them sat together in silence, the weight of the conversation settling like a heavy blanket. Dana's heart still ached, but she felt a spark of hope. She knew the world wouldn't change overnight, but in that moment, she had planted a seed of strength and self-love in her son. The next morning, Jamal woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight peeked through his bedroom window, warming the space and casting soft rays over his bed. He stared at the ceiling for a while, thinking about what his mom had said the night before. Her words had felt comforting. but they hadn't erased the hurt he felt deep inside. As he got dressed for school, he chose his favorite red hoodie, the one Nia had picked out for his birthday. He glanced in the mirror, tugging at the edges of the fabric. "Just be you," he whispered, repeating his mother's words. They echoed in his head like a soft mantra. At the breakfast table, Dana noticed the quiet determination on his face. "You doing okay, baby?" she asked gently, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. Jamal nodded, though his eyes didn't quite meet hers. "I think so," he replied softly. Nia, seated across from him, nudged his foot under the table. "If anyone messes with you today, just remember, your big sister's got your back," she said, her smile playful but protective. Jamal grinned despite himself, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. At school, things weren't much different than the day before. On the playground during recess, Jamal stood off to the side, watching as a group of boys kicked a soccer ball back and forth. He wanted to join, but the memory of their rejection made him hesitate. "Hey," came a voice from behind him. Jamal turned to see Marcus, another boy in his class. Marcus wasn't one of the kids who had told him he couldn't play the day before, but he had been there, silently watching. "What's up?" Jamal asked cautiously. Marcus shuffled his feet. "You want to play?" Jamal blinked, caught off guard. "I don't know," he mumbled. Marcus looked down, scuffing his shoe against the pavement. "I heard what they said yesterday," he admitted. "It wasn't cool. My dad says people shouldn't treat others differently because of how they look." Jamal tilted his head, unsure of how to respond. Marcus continued, his voice quieter now. "You're actually really good at soccer. I've seen you kick the ball during gym class. We could use you on our team." Jamal felt a flicker of hope, but it was guarded. "What if they don't want me to play?" he asked. Marcus shrugged. "Then they can sit out," he said simply. "Come on." Hesitating for just a moment, Jamal finally nodded. "Okay," he said, a small smile breaking across his face. As they walked toward the group, Jamal noticed a couple of the boys exchanging glances. One of them, Liam, frowned. "Why's he coming over here?" he muttered under his breath, loud enough for Jamal to hear. Jamal froze, his confidence wavering. He thought about turning around, but Marcus stepped forward. "Jamal's playing. If you don't like it, you can sit this one out," Marcus said firmly, his voice steady. The other boys exchanged looks, but no one protested. Liam rolled his eyes but didn't say anything else. The game began, and at first Jamal stayed on the sidelines, hesitating to get too involved. But as the ball rolled toward him, something shifted. He remembered his mom's words, "Just be you," and decided to give it his all. Jamal's first kick sent the ball soaring across the field, earning a shout of approval from Marcus. "Nice one," he called, giving Jamal a thumbs up. As the game continued, Jamal's nerves melted away. He chased the ball with renewed energy, weaving past the other players and scoring a goal. For the first time, he didn't feel like he had to prove anything. He was just playing, just being himself, and that was enough. When the game ended, Marcus clapped Jamal on the back. "Told you you're good," he said with a grin. Jamal felt a warmth spread through him, not just from the compliment, but from the feeling of being included. For the first time in days, the sting of rejection faded, replaced by something brighter. That evening, as Jamal sat at the dinner table with his family, he couldn't stop smiling. Dana noticed immediately. "Looks like someone had a good day," she said with a knowing look. Jamal nodded, his eyes lighting up. "Marcus let me play soccer with him," he said proudly. "And I scored a goal," Nia cheered, raising her glass of orange juice. "That's my brother." Dana smiled, though her eyes filled with emotion. "See, baby? I told you, just be yourself. The right people will see how amazing you are." Jamal nodded, his confidence growing. "I think I get it now, Mummy. Some people might not like me, but it's okay. I like me, and that's what matters. Dana reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That's right, sweetheart. And as long as you remember that, you can do anything. The following weeks brought subtle changes in Jamal. The confidence he found on the soccer field carried over into other parts of his life. He started raising his hand more in class, asking questions, and sharing answers without hesitation. He began sketching during free time again, proudly showing his artwork to his teacher, who displayed one of his pieces on the classroom wall. But what made the biggest difference was how Jamal started to carry himself. Though he was still only 10, there was a quiet strength in the way he walked down the halls, a spark in his eye that hadn't been there before, and the people around him began to notice. One afternoon during lunch, Jamal sat at a corner table with Marcus and a few other classmates. The conversation was light, with the kids talking about their favorite TV shows and snacks, when a commotion broke out at a nearby table. "Hey, give it back!" a small voice shouted. Jamal turned to see another boy, Ethan, struggling to grab his lunchbox from Liam, the same boy who had muttered about Jamal on the soccer field weeks before. Liam was holding the lunchbox just out of Ethan's reach, a smirk on his face. "Come on, it's just a joke," Liam said, laughing as Ethan's face turned red with frustration. Jamal's heart sank. He remembered how it felt to be on the other end of that kind of treatment, the sting of being made to feel small and powerless. Without thinking, Jamal stood up and walked over to them. "Hey, Liam," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Give it back." Liam turned, clearly surprised to see Jamal standing there. "Why do you care?" he said with a sneer. "It's not your lunchbox." Jamal took a step closer, his voice unwavering. "Because it's not yours either. And it's not okay to take stuff just to make someone else feel bad." The cafeteria had grown quieter, other kids watching the scene unfold. Liam hesitated, glancing around and realizing all eyes were on him. With a scoff, he dropped the lunchbox onto the table. "Whatever," he muttered, walking away. Ethan quickly grabbed his lunchbox, his eyes wide with gratitude. "Thanks, Jamal," he said softly. Jamal smiled, giving him a reassuring nod. "It's okay. You didn't deserve that." As Jamal returned to his seat, Marcus leaned over, grinning. "You're like a superhero or something," he joked. Jamal laughed, feeling a surge of pride, not the kind that came from being praised, but the kind that came from knowing he had done the right thing. Later that day, Jamal's teacher, Mrs. Perez, pulled him aside. "I heard what happened in the cafeteria," she said with a smile. "You showed a lot of courage standing up for Ethan. That's not always easy to do." Jamal shrugged, his cheeks flushing. "I just didn't want him to feel bad," he said quietly. Mrs. Perez nodded, her expression warm. "You know, Jamal, kindness like that has a way of spreading. When you stand up for someone else, you show people what it means to be brave, and that makes the world a better place." Her words stuck with Jamal for the rest of the day. As he walked home after school, his thoughts drifted back to his mom's conversation with him weeks ago. She had told him to be himself, to show love even when the world didn't always give it back. And now, he could feel the truth of her words in his own actions. That evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Jamal recounted the story from the cafeteria. "And then Liam just gave it back," he said, his eyes wide with excitement. Dana listened intently, her heart swelling with pride. "Jamal, that was such a brave thing to do," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Standing up for someone else takes strength, and it shows the kind of person you are." Nia grinned at her brother. "You're a hero, little man," she teased, ruffling his hair. Jamal laughed, but he shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I just didn't want Ethan to feel sad." Dana reached across the table and took his hand. "That's what makes you special, baby. You care about people, and you don't let fear stop you from doing what's right. Don't ever lose that." Jamal beamed, a new sense of purpose growing inside him. It wasn't about being liked by everyone. It was about being true to himself and showing kindness wherever he could. As he helped clear the table after dinner, he turned to his mom. "Mommy, do you think if I keep being kind, It'll help other people be kind too. Dana smiled, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. I do, sweetheart. Kindness is like a ripple in a pond. It starts small, but it can spread farther than you ever imagined. Jamal nodded thoughtfully, holding on to her words as if they were a secret map to something greater. Weeks turned into months, and Jamal's quiet courage continued to ripple through his school and beyond. The boy who had once questioned his own worth now walked with his head held high, his confidence no longer dependent on the approval of others. But what surprised him the most was how his small acts of kindness and bravery began to inspire those around him. In the classroom, Marcus started stepping in when he saw classmates being teased. One afternoon, when a girl named Emily was laughed at for wearing hand-me-down clothes, Marcus spoke up. Who cares what she's wearing? She's cool, and that's all that matters. Emily's face lit up with gratitude, and the teasing stopped instantly. At recess, Ethan, the boy whose lunchbox Jamal had defended, began inviting kids who were sitting alone to join him. You don't have to eat by yourself, he'd say with a shy smile. Slowly but surely, the cafeteria felt a little less lonely for everyone. Even Liam, the boy who had mocked Jamal and taken Ethan's lunchbox, began to change. It didn't happen overnight, but one day, Liam approached Jamal after soccer practice. Hey, he mumbled, shuffling his feet. That was a nice goal you scored today. You're pretty good. Jamal blinked in surprise but smiled. Thanks, he said simply. He didn't need to say anything more. Liam's awkward compliment was enough to show that something in him was shifting. Back at home, Dana couldn't help but notice the changes in her son. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, she sat on the edge of his mattress and smoothed the blanket over him. You've been different lately, Jamal, she said softly. Different how? He asked, his eyes wide. Stronger, Dana replied. Kinder, like you found something inside you that makes you shine even brighter than before. Jamal smiled sleepily, his voice barely above a whisper. I think it's because of what you told me, Mommy, about being myself and being kind, even when it's hard. Dana felt a lump rise in her throat, but she managed to smile. You've made me so proud, baby, she said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. And you've made a difference, not just in your life, but in the lives of everyone around you. At the school's year-end assembly, the principal, Mrs. Carter, took the stage to deliver an unexpected announcement. This year, we're starting a new tradition, she began, smiling warmly at the students gathered before her. We're giving out an award for someone who has shown extraordinary kindness and leadership, someone who has inspired others to be better. The room buzzed with whispers as she continued. This year's award goes to a student who reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest changes. Please join me in congratulating Jamal Washington. Jamal froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Marcus nudged him. Go up there, man. The room erupted into applause as Jamal made his way to the stage. His heart pounded, but he felt a strange calm as he stood before his peers. Mrs. Carter handed him a small trophy, engraved with the words, kindness in action, and leaned down to speak into the microphone. Jamal, you've shown us what it means to be brave and kind. Your actions remind us that we're all capable of making the world a better place, one small step at a time. Jamal's classmates cheered, and he caught sight of Dana and Nia in the crowd, clapping with tears in their eyes. As he looked out at the smiling faces, he realized something profound. The answer to his question, why don't they like me, had changed. It wasn't about being liked or fitting in. It was about being true to himself and standing up for what was right. That night, as the family celebrated at home, Nia raised her glass of sparkling cider in a toast. To Jamal, the bravest, kindest kid I know, Dana added, her voice full of pride. And to the ripples of kindness that start small but reach far. Jamal laughed, but his expression grew thoughtful as he looked around the table. Do you think my kindness will keep spreading, Mommy? He asked, Dana smiled, pulling him close. I know it will, baby, because you've shown people that even the smallest voice can make a big difference, and that's something the world will never forget. Jamal grinned, the weight of his earlier pain replaced by a sense of purpose. He didn't need everyone to like him. He just needed to keep being himself, showing kindness and courage wherever he could. And in doing so, he knew he could help change the world, one small act at a time.